is like the next to last class. We have one more and that's it. Okay, so today we have a small, so nice to see you so close. Feels good. Usually Jordan is so far away and Weiselberg too. So, okay, so today we're going to talk about, so quick review from last time, okay? We're talking about, remember, the foundations of civilization, right? Which for Irigaray rest on the proper balance between male and female. Remember, she's taking this idea from Eastern cosmology, the idea that in Eastern thought, yin and yang need to be in balance for there to be cosmic harmony and so forth, right? So, okay, so we know that already. So last time we focused mostly on the issue of male sexual energy. And this is, of course, the reason she's focusing on that is because she is trying to break down patriarchy, right? Before you can have the equality between male and female, you have to break down the patriarchal male-dominated system, right? And so, first of all, she's offering a critique, right, of how things are now. And then she's going to offer the remedy. So the critique, right, she's saying mostly that in our culture, we educate the mind, but we don't educate the body. That's in a nutshell what the problem is, right? Let me say that again. In our culture, we educate the mind, but not the body. So people can, and especially, of course, in our culture, this is both for women and men, obviously, but this is especially problematic for men, right? Because they are the ones who achieve the power, and then they are in this state of imbalance, right? Which makes for the chaos that we're in now. So the issue, of course, let me summarize, right? You educate the mind, not the body. So you become highly sophisticated, very intelligent, very powerful man, right? You have, you are in control. You're masterful on every level of your life, except your relationships, right? And in your relationships, the man falters because he has not learned to cultivate his own sexual energy. This is not because he's a jerk, right? This is simply, we are not teaching this, right? This is not about saying, she's not bashing males and saying, yeah, they're animals, there's no hope for them. She's saying the males are like they are, like we are, right? But if there's no refinement of that energy, and this is what is missing in our educational system, then they get to power, and they have this profound imbalance in their own being, right? And for her, if they're not successful in their relationships, they cannot even do well in their position of power, right? That's, of course, what she's hinting at. She's saying the reason we have such chaos in the world, war, ecological devastation, economic insecurity, is because the males that are in power are themselves out of balance. They have not been able to sustain a relationship with the female, and therefore they are leading from a very imbalanced position. Am I all clear so far? Yes? Okay. So this is first, right? This is her critical moment. This is when she's saying, right, things as they are cannot be sustained. The people in power. And of course, this is the same for women, right? If you have a woman in power, you can reverse this, right? If women were in power and they could not sustain relationships with males, they would also rule in a lopsided way, right? They would also exercise their power in a lopsided way. So she's not just saying males, or she's saying anybody, any gender who's in power and has not been able and is good at what they do because they have been trained, their minds have been trained, but their body hasn't been cultivated, and they cannot sustain relationship with the opposite gender, they are not going to succeed, right? Or they will succeed, but they are not going to rule in a way that is balanced and productive and fruitful, right? So that's the idea. So of course, now she's going now, and today and next time we'll talk about the more positive aspect of how do we train this energy, right? And now we are going to look at both male and female. This is something that both males and females need to learn. And if we can learn this art of refining our sexual energy, we can begin to connect with each other, and we can begin to set the stage for a more balanced world, right? So I'm going to look at 4 concepts between today and next time. You can write them down already. First of all, I'm going to look at silence. Silence in relationships, yes. Number 2, patience. It's another way to cultivate this energy. Number 3, we'll look at the concept of moving boundaries, boundaries that are moving. And number 4, double listening. So a listening that is double listening. So that's the plan between today and next time. Today we'll just focus on silence and patience. So now, because she writes in a very poetic way, kind of like a Buber, right? Very similar way of writing. We're going to look at this as poetry, meaning we're going to stop on a few sentences today, maybe 3 or 4, and we're just gonna mull over them, right? We're going to try to digest them, try to get the meaning out of it. It's poetic, so this should, the sentence should be hitting each one of us differently, right? We should all have a way to interpret a given sentence, because of course this is poetic language. Again, what's the point of poetry? Poetry is meant to engage us, right? Meant to awaken something in us. She's not going to, she's not doing this teaching, right? Saying, here's how everybody should think. She's saying things in a way that jolt us awake. That's her purpose, like Buber, right? Buber was trying to awaken in us the possibility of the IU. She's trying to awaken in us same possibility of the IU, but this time between genders, right? So she's being poetic so that we can kind of be awakened, each one of us, differently, right? So let's, first of all, she begins on page 1. So let's go there, page 1, the actual one, not Roman numeral. And she begins with a really beautiful concept, which is the concept of threshold. So let me look at the quote. Yeah, concept of threshold on page 1. I can read that sentence if you want. The path towards the other is first a path towards the infinite. You should be hearing Levinas here. She's very familiar with Levinas, right? So she has in fact had a whole chapter about Levinas in one of her other books, right? So she's connected with him, and Buber, of course. Towards the infinite, an infinite in which both I and the other risk losing ourselves. And here she says a threshold is lacking. So what's a threshold? Let's stop just on that word and then we'll go a little deeper. What is a threshold? She's saying there has to be a threshold between me and the other. What does a threshold mean? What's the meaning, basic meaning of threshold? What is that? And then people in the Zoom, if you want to talk, you can just raise your virtual hand and I can see that. Or blurt what you have to say if you can't find your virtual hand. Okay, threshold, anybody?
Isn't it just like point of entry?
Yeah, exactly. Like the line right at the door. It's a threshold. It's a limit. It's a boundary. Basically, she's saying, right, what is missing nowadays in relationships is a threshold, meaning we do not see the other as a space different from ours. We don't see the other as a different space, as a different world, as a different subjectivity. And this is very similar to Buber, right? It's the difference between the I-it and the I-you, remember, right? The I-it, everything is within my reach in the I-it, right? In the I-it, I can always go over there and take it, right? I can take this, take that, take this. There is no threshold in the I-it relationship, right? In the I-it relationship, I am constantly crossing over any threshold there is to grab what I want, right? Here she's saying, no, threshold, limit, boundary, sacred space, right? That's where she's going with that, right? And so there's a threshold, there's a line that we should be aware of before we get to the other. This is the beginning of this cultivation of the sexual energy, is that. So let's go deeper into this notion of threshold. I'm still on page 1. Go to still the first paragraph, but from the bottom of it, count 1, 2, 3, 4 to recognize the existence. If you're with me, wave at me. So page 1, first paragraph, 4 lines from the bottom. Who's there? You can wave in the Zoom or here. Okay, good. All right, to recognize the existence of another subjectivity implies recognizing that it belongs to and constitutes a world of its own. And we're going to try and talk about what does it mean to see the other as a world of their own, which cannot be substituted for mine. That the subjectivity of the other is irreducible to my subjectivity. So, all right, let's talk about this a little bit. What does it mean that the other is a world of their own? How is this hitting you? What are you learning from there with regards to your own relationships? Try to think of your gendered relationships. Try to see with the opposite sex. How are they a world of their own? And how does that hit you? How have you experienced this painfully or joyfully, right? How does it hit you? Yes.
They have different experiences than we do.
Okay, so first of all, different experiences, right? So I mean, different body, different way of dwelling in the world, right? It's completely different. And one of the main problems between the gender relationship is that we think they think like us, and so when they're not responding in the way the way we would respond, right? We get angry, right? Or we do to them what we think we would. Wait, let me say that bit again. We do to them what we would like them to do to us, but it's not necessarily what they would like. I'll give you a classic example. This is took me a long time to learn this. So we women, I'm talking here about romantic relationship, right? We women, we like the man to do stuff for us, like, bring me somewhere, buy me this, give me that, help me with that. So we always feel very happy when the guy is kind of extending himself in this way, right? And so because we love to receive from the man, we actually really enjoy that when they're overextending themselves to, going out of their way to do something for us. We love that, right? So because that's how we are loved, we start doing it to the guy. So we drive him around everywhere, we do his laundry, we pay his bills, right? How does that make the guy feel? I have two guys with me today.
I mean, some people might think that's like they're losing their job in a way.
Okay, so
like, it's their job to drive you around and everything. Now all of a sudden you're doing it. It's like they might not want you to do that because it's like it's my responsibility.
Okay, so you're thinking more in terms of the roles, but just you. How do you react without thinking of whose job it is? Like, how does that feel when the woman starts to do your laundry, but drive you around, buy you stuff?
I mean, some people might also find it nice.
Okay, so how do you find it?
I wouldn't mind it.
I enjoy
it.
The woman doing everything for you all the time.
Not everything.
Okay, good. What about you? Okay, interesting. Why? See, this we don't know. We think we're being loving, right? Let me do this for you. Let me do that for you. Here, move. Let me do that. Yeah, so why controlling?
Because you lose control of those things. Like if
That's so interesting. Yeah.
If I drive to work every day, I might have somewhere I stop to get coffee, or like there may be other things along my drive to work.
I'll buy you your coffee.
See, that's it. And then it's like
no?
that. It's like even more controlling.
See?
It's like you're not allowing the other to be themselves.
See, now this is so interesting because I hope you guys are hearing it, because we would never think that. Like if you tell me I'm going to drive you to work, I'm going to be like, yes, let's do this. So you see how it's interesting, right? How the male is not necessarily wanting us to love him like we would want him to love us. You see what I mean? So this is what we often forget. And so this is, by the way, this is such a crucial moment, because very often women, they want to, kind of earn the love of the man. And so we do things for the man over and over again. And in the end, the man leaves and we're like, what? I did everything for you and now you're leaving. This is because the way we want to be loved is not necessarily the way they want to be loved. And the best way, what I'm learning, and maybe this is theory for me, but you guys can confirm, right? The best way a man would feel loved, tell me if this is true, is when we receive happily what they give us. How does that feel? My two males here in the front.
Yeah, it's pretty active.
That sounds good, right? Like you give me something and I'm like, wow, that's amazing. I love it. Now you feel amazing. Even more amazing than if I did it for you. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is better? That I receive something from you and I'm like, yeah, I love it. Thank you so much. Or that I do stuff for you. What's more gratifying for a man?
The giver.
He's hesitating. What about you?
For me, I'm a giver, so it's more of the giver.
Okay, interesting. So about the same, about on the fence.
Overall, yeah.
Okay, good. So that's the idea. So this is so good to remember, because very often when we want to attract love as women, we turn into the mother of the guy, right? And then the guy feels control. And what we're learning here is like, the way I want to be loved, not necessarily the way you want to be loved. The way I want to be loved is, do things for me, extend yourself for me. The way they want to be loved is on the contrary. Receive what I give to you. Stop, saying no or doing things for me or not being happy with what I'm giving you, right? So this is just one example, right? If you've read the very famous work by John Gray, Men Are From Mars, Women From Venus. Anybody familiar with that? This is from the 80s, so y'all were still in the mother's womb. So, but this is a great text, actually, where this guy is basically saying, men are from Mars, women from Venus. It's a different planet, and it's a different it's a different love language. And we basically have to learn the other person's love, the other gender's love language, to be able to truly love them. And if we constantly speak woman to man, they're not going to be happy. Or if the man always speaks man to woman, right? So we have to actually realize, first, we're different worlds. And second, now we have to learn each other's love language. And that is the challenge, right? So that's what she's kind of aiming for here, right? Okay, so so we're going to look into that, right? How do we connect to this other world, right? She's not going to talk specifically male, female. It's going to be more general for both genders need to learn this, right? So we're not going to talk about how, you know, this is what women want, this is what men want, right? We're going to focus on what everyone should be practicing in order to refine our sexual energy. And we women also have, right, refinement to go through. As you'll see, you will recognize yourselves in these 4 points as doing it wrong as women. This is a sign. If you're doing it, if you're not doing that, that's your energy is not refined, right? We didn't talk about women sexual energy, but you're going to locate yourself. Basic idea here, what we're going to learn in these 4 points of where we are going to enter this cultivation, this refinement, right? We're going to go through this discipline. What we're going to learn is that these 4 points is the difference between nature and culture. These 4 points will lead us from a state of nature to a state of culture. State of nature is what? Look at nature. You see animals going around. What are they doing all day? What's your pet doing? Each time your pet talks to you, what is it about? Is it about the great, you know, book that they read or the idea they had about, you know, world change? What is the pet talking about to you? I have a pet right now and all they talk about is that, and I'm feeling extremely used.
Food?
Yes, right. Gimme, 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 gimme. That's what your pet is saying to you all day. Gimme, gimme, give me attention. Let's go play. Give me food. Give me some caresses. Give, 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 give. This is the state of nature. Animals are all about taking, 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 right? Except when they get pregnant, occasionally then they give a little bit, right? But in general, the animal is after its prey. Animal is after its food. All day long is looking for food. And so are we, by the way. We are also animals. Let's not make a difference, right? We are at our brutal, primitive state, animals always trying to get. Everything is mine, mine, mine. The only moment where we are interrupted is in the relationship with a gendered other, because that gendered other is going to immediately resist the urge of possession. And you will immediately find yourself against the wall when it comes to, and this is why these relationships are so frustrating, to be honest, right? Especially if we're used to getting what we want. If you're a strong personality, used to getting what you want and used to getting, you know, working for what you need and getting it, you will hit against the wall with the romantic relationships because that person is not going to bend to your will. It's not going to happen. And so most of us get really pissed and frustrated when this happens, right? And Irigaray is saying, no, we need to move from nature to culture. And this can be something very joyful. We can start moving differently in the world than just taking. And this can become, this is the moment of refinement. Most of the fights that you have between man and woman has to do with one of them being in a state of nature and wanting to possess and control and dominate the other and have, right? This is 100% of the fights, not most. 100%. 1 or 2 of them are in the state of nature. I want. You're not giving me what I want, right? And now we are fighting. And she's saying that's the reason we have this war. Because we have 2 subjectivities who both want. And so how do we get together? Well, we have to refine this energy of wanting and we have to become cultivated, right? Civilized. Okay, so let's go to the point 1 of this cultivation, which is silence. And this is on page 5. Okay, it's a beautiful sentence. Let's stop on that one. First paragraph, or whatever, second paragraph. Let's just start at the beginning. Thus silence, who is with me? Please wave at me if you're there. Okay. Thus silence will no longer be that which has not yet, okay, skipping. Next line. Silence is the speaking of the threshold. It's a very interesting, beautiful sentence. Silence is the speaking of the threshold. Okay, let's stop a little bit. What does this mean? Obviously it's poetry. Threshold doesn't speak. Silence is not a language. So what is she saying when she says, right, silence is the speaking of the threshold? What is she trying to say? Yes.
By being silent, you're like allowing that threshold to like open.
Ooh, I like that. Okay, that's nice. Okay, let's write that down. Right, silence is the access, right? is the speaking. It's opening the threshold, meaning you have access into the other world through silence. This is interesting. You know how your therapist always telling you have to communicate, right? You have to speak. Here she's saying, no, no, no. Silence is the point of access. So how does it work? It sounds very abstract. How is it that, how can I access someone else through silence? It doesn't make sense. Normally I can access through speech. What do you, like when we are on a first date, right? You're not sitting in silence. It'll be the worst date ever, right? You're saying something, there's something, saying something, and you're trying to penetrate each other's worlds, right? You're saying, no, 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 that's not the way. Silence is the way that that world opens. How does that work?
I guess when you're silent, you're giving the other like an opportunity to talk, and then you get to know them, and you're creating this opening.
Okay, I like that. I like that. Silence is opening up space for the other to express themselves. That's a really good way to see it. Let me say that again, right? Silence is the opening up of space for the other to speak. If you're not silent, the other cannot speak. Therefore, you have no access to the other. You're just pouring yourself out on the other. So silence is basically creating a space for the other to emerge, to be in your life, to open up about their own experience, right? Very nice, very nice. Anything else about silence that's coming up in your mind? So this is silence in terms of conversation, but there's also an inner silence you can develop. What is this inner silence that is needed so that the threshold can be open? Tell me a little bit about the inner silence that you need.
I guess maybe like when you're with someone, let's say you're in a relationship and you like want them to like do something a certain way, sometimes it's like better to be silent than to force them to be like what you want them to
Okay,
be.
very good, right? Silencing your expectations, right? This is pure boober, right? In our mind, we have this whole vision how the other's supposed to be, right? We have all these expectations of how a woman should act, a man should be, how love looks like, right? What happiness looks like. We have all these expectations crowding our minds. So the other comes our way and they're not fulfilling these expectations because our minds so loudly imposing them. Now we cannot even have a connection, right? Very often, this is another source of war between the genders, is the inability to silence the mind. You come in the situation with a world of expectations, and when the other doesn't bend to your expectation, now you're in a bad mood. Now you're frustrated. Why? When were they ever supposed to bend to your expectations, right? Who says? Where is this written that the other is supposed to bend to your expectations, right? So this is another very hard thing to do, is to silence the mind, to silence the expectations, so that, like you said, we can allow the other to come as they are. This is one of the biggest obstacles to relationships, is you're so full of who you think the beloved's supposed to look like that you miss the actual person that comes your way. This is the problem, by the way, of having an ideal man or ideal woman in your head. When you enter a relationship, you have this construct of what the ideal woman looks like, or the ideal man, and you enter the relationship, that guy, that woman can't, not even reaching the ankle of that ideal, and now you're like, no, that can't be the one, because I have this ideal, and it must exist somewhere. It doesn't. Let me just tell you, I'm breaking your bubble. That ideal does not exist, right? It's not supposed to exist. And so once we set aside the ideal, then maybe we can receive the other as who they are and treasure what they are, right? Did I ever ask you the question about why God put Adam to sleep in the book of Genesis? No? Oh, this is a good one. Here's a great riddle for you. Genesis 2 in the Bible. God creates the woman. It's very strange the way he does it. He puts the man to sleep, number one. It's very interesting. Right? Puts him to sleep. And while the man is sleeping, he's making this woman. And then when he's done, he brings her to him, right? Hopefully he's woken up by then. So here's my question to you. Why does God put the man to sleep? Why? God is usually kind of democratic. Why isn't he working together with the man to build this woman? I mean, that would make sense, building for him. Why is he not involving the man in this situation? It's very interesting. Anybody know?
Well, probably man wouldn't be silent. He'd be watching over God's shoulders and like, oh, he like do this.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. The man would be like, bigger, smaller, taller, shorter. blue eyes, no, black eyes, no, blonde hair, red hair, right? The man would be forging this woman in his image, right? And God is like, no, that's not what you need. You need somebody who is not according to your ideal. Why? So I pondered this for a long time. Why did God in that text make a woman who doesn't fit the ideal of man? Therefore, he's always going to be disappointed, right? You have an ideal, this woman comes around, too short, too small, too big, too tall, right? And now you're a little bit disappointed. Why is God creating a disappointment? What is going on here? What's he trying to do? Anybody know why God creates a disappointing partner for Adam? Why it must be so? That the man must be disappointed to some degree? Why is that? So it sounds very cruel joke to me. Why would he do that? Zoom people, I haven't heard you yet. Can't just be talking to Weiselberg. You want to try, Williams?
I'm just so that the man has an other.
Okay, so what does that mean? Is that good? Why does he need another?
That he develops his character properly.
Okay, how do you develop your character with an imperfect woman? Tell us more.
So that like you're saying, when you try to define things and like try to say what like is right or proper, you have somebody else that might have a different view of it, and then you develop from that. You create relations.
Okay, so go even beyond otherness. Imperfect, annoying, disappointing. How is that good? That the woman, into some degree, or the man, right? You can flip it. It's always going to be, to some degree, a disappointment to what you were expecting, right? How is it that this is, and remember, God at the end says this is good. So how is it good that the person God put you with gonna always be somewhat of a disappointment? How is that good? Yes, Goldstein, sorry, go ahead.
To help him like learn the skill of releasing expectations, so that he could be introduced to the other in general.
Okay, that's what Williams is saying. More, so go deeper. What happens when you are in love with someone imperfect? How does that alter your love or deepen your love, to be in love with someone imperfect? Let's put it this way. If that person was perfect and you love them, what kind of love would you have? They're perfect. Boring. Okay, it's a word of truth right there. Is it boring? Why is it boring? They're perfect. You can look at this perfection all day long. They do everything you want exactly the way you want it. Why boring? What do you guess?
I don't know. Like you don't get to experience something new. Like it doesn't like movie or something.
Okay, good. No challenge, right? No friction, right? But what else? I really want to get to that. So you're loving someone perfect. How deep is your love when you're loving someone who is perfect? How deep is your love?
You kind of love them for what they mean to you more than loving them for themselves and who they are.
Okay, they're pure it at that moment, right? Boober and it. If they're perfect for you, what are they more than a possession? Right? They're the thing. This is perfect for me. I'm happy with my bottle, right? So now, if they're not perfect for you, now your love has to go through a journey, right? Your love has to become unconditional. Your love has to become patient. Your love has to become kind. Your love has to become long-suffering. And now your love has to grow deeper than what it was initially. You see? So this is finally, after I think I was thinking about this verse for months. I was like, why he created an imperfect woman? This is because, you come to the idea that, we all have this idea of the soulmate, that they're a perfect fit, and we want to be that to someone else. And then we stumble in real relationships and we're like, they're not perfect. I'm not perfect. Does that mean they're not the one? Does that mean this is not my soulmate, right? And what we're learning from this text is that they were meant to be imperfect. They were meant to not fit with you completely. Doesn't mean at all, right? But there was meant to be some friction. Why? So that your love would have an opportunity to deepen. Otherwise, you remain on the I-it level. You never access the I-you level, right? This is to bring you from I-it to I-you, right? So this is going back to this, right? The notion, I don't even know how we got there. Yes, the expectations, right? So you silence your mouth and you silence your mind also of who you think they should be, right? I had a friend, here's another way we do this. We set expectations. I had a friend who was a conductor, orchestra conductor, brilliant orchestra conductor. And he fell in love with this girl. And when he met the parents were like, you know, we would like you to choose another career. You know, doctor, lawyer, what is this conductor stuff? Like, this is not a real job. We want our daughter to be with someone who has a real job. Like, they were going to tell him, like, he had to shift his career to be, right? How often we do that, right? We see the person and we're like, well, oh, here's another great example. Hopefully, it's a friend of mine. Hopefully, she will never listen to this. I hope she will never listen to this. So, anyways, this is a great story. So, this is a woman. She's an academic, right? PhD, you know, brilliant woman. And she falls in love with a construction worker. Okay, so he's a brilliant construction worker, mind you, right? I've seen him at work. Like he's so, like, you can sense the love. Like he has the hammer and the nail and he's dancing. You know, it's like, it's so graceful. Like, and he's a big guy, but when he's hammering a nail, he becomes a ballerina. Like I saw him at work, there was so much grace. And anyways, so he's great at that. But of course, she can't be with a construction worker because she's a PhD, right? Correct? That makes sense. Okay, so she has convinced this. Now, this man was very good and he was making money and he always had his group of friends around him with whom he was working. He was so happy, right? He was very happy. Then they get married. She made this man sit in an office and become a financial advisor. This man right now is on antidepressants. Nobody knows why. I know why. I'll tell you why right now. This man is stuck in four walls when he was always, you know, out there, you know, in the air, doing his thing, in control. So often we do this, right? To the people we love, we're like, well, I think you should do this so that we can feel more secure. And on so many levels we do this, right? Whether it's through the job or we want them to be like this here. And so we are losing who they really are. And that's what Irigaray is saying. Silence of the mind, silence of the mouth, right? Okay, so let's continue to another quote. Still page 6 this time. I'm competing with a lawnmower. There's always some machine out there doing noise. Okay, where is it? Ah, yeah, here it is. Okay, first paragraph, page 6. Fourth line. So now going, right, this silence that we have to do, right, this kind of curbing of our expectations, she says, does not necessarily give rise to sadness or frustration. In fact, frustration comes when you have an expectation, right? So actually, when you get rid of expectations, she says, it not only do you not have sadness or frustration, but rather to the joy of opening to another source of a new saying. I think that's what, Rodriguez, you were trying to get to, right? The source of a new saying, new meanings, new horizons, new world, right? And so this kind of, you know, losing your expectations and being with someone imperfect can actually be a very joyful journey. That's what she's saying, right? It's very joyful because now you're open to a whole new world beyond your expectations. Now you can really travel. You're not stuck in one place treading water, right? Okay, so here's the next point with silence, page 7. Let's explore this sentence together. The future is not defined. Here, first line. Skipping the patience part, moving to the next section of the sentence. The future is not defined here by the past, and the house, notably of language, is not yet built. So silence, why? Because the house of language is not yet built. Okay, again, she's being metaphorical, poetic. What is the house of language that we have to build in order to connect beyond, in order to move beyond the silence, right? What does she mean by a house of language that has to be built so that we can move beyond the silence? So now we're trying to get into words, but it's a house that has to be built.
Just made me think about how we use terms like binary and like how like the whole like LGBTQ thing, and like there's always like another letter being added or something. It's because like she's saying, like this is language we didn't have before, and now that we've like opened the door for them to feel comfortable and speak now, their language is being created.
Okay, excellent, right? So what you're saying, which is happening very, very interestingly on the LGBT side, she's saying it needs to happen also in the heterosexual relationship. We need to invent new words. We need to invent new concepts, new definition of woman, new definition of man, new definition of love, right? So she's saying just like we have to create new words to open up a world, right, for this new experience, right, which is the LGBT experience. Likewise, even in the relationship, you know, the binary, the old binary, we need to open up new words, create new words so that we can create a new experience, right? She's again moving beyond the patriarchal structure of, you know, the binary. She's moving beyond, okay, woman this, man that, and happily married with 2 kids. You know, this is over for her. So now, because we are moving towards a new experience of gender relations, right, we need to invent a new language. What is love? What is marriage? What is woman? What is man, right? All of this has to change, right? We cannot define love as we did before. How did we define love before? Possession. Well, right? This was the contract of marriage was a contract which was a financial contract in the patriarchal structure, right? You give money to the family, you have your wife, she's a possession among other possessions, right? Love was possessive. Still today, we think of love as possessive and we are jealous of each other. Like, hey, you belong to me. Just recently, another friend of mine, who hopefully will not listen to this, held up at gunpoint because she was in a car with another man. Her boyfriend came, took out his guns, like, get out of the car. Come with me. And he drove her to her mother's house, right? Love is possession. Totally normal. Totally annoying, right? Even the girl is like, well, you know, normal. He was mad, right? This is normal. So we live in a world still where love is possession. And we have not yet formulated another definition of love, which is not possession. What does it look like? A love that is not possessive, right? Woman, what is woman? Is woman just receptive, the receptacle of man, or is she just passive? Is she, right? This was the common definition of woman is, remember, we did some Aristotle last time, right? Woman should submit, woman can never lead, and so forth. Can we redefine now? Can we reinterpret the biological aspects? Same with man. Man should lead, is the position of authority. Can we reinterpret what it means to be a man now that we are reinterpreting woman? We have to reinterpret man. Otherwise, they cannot be together. There's the beautiful writer, Anais Nin, who is well known mostly for her erotica writings, but she's also somebody who thought very deeply about relationships. And she wrote a beautiful essay, a series of essays compiled in the book called In Favor of the Sensitive Man. Right? This is a collection of essays. And in this, one of the essays is about how we have now achieved a new woman, but we have yet to encounter the new man that will match this new woman, right? The new woman who is emancipated, who has a job, who is, you know, not taking any craziness anymore, who is independent. What kind of man can connect to the woman like that, right? The man has to change to be in connection with that woman. So same idea here, right? The house has not yet been built. We have not yet understood. We have not yet reformulated what is man, what is woman, what is love, what is even marriage. Traditionally, marriages, you get together, you have a party, you sign a contract. No more, at least in France. Here, people still get married. But in France, nobody gets married like that in a church. So what is marriage then, right? Is this an old word we have to throw out? I mean, even today, many people don't get married, right? They get together. So what does it mean, marriage? Is this an old concept, or can we reformulate it so that it fits the needs of the present generation, right? That's the whole work that needs to happen nowadays. Are you following me? Everybody with me in the Zoom? Yes? Okay. Now, let's go to, this is another one that I like. Very interesting quote on page 18. We're going so slow, I'm never going to finish. Okay, page 18. Okay, this is a great one. This is okay, second paragraph. I'll just start from the top of that paragraph. The renunciation of speaking, right, still in silence, according to a discourse that we know in advance, right? So you're refraining from imposing expectations or roles, right, on the person. It is a word of welcome to the one who comes to us from beyond the horizon that has been opened, but also closed by our language. It is a welcoming to another world, to another manner of speaking and saying than the one we know. And here's the sentence I want you to underline. It is a laying out of a space-time that must still be virgin in order for a meeting to happen. Okay, so again, the crazy expression, space-time that has to be virgin for there to be an encounter. Okay, what does this mean? What is this space-time? And why is she putting the word virgin here? Remember, she's reinterpreting some of these concepts, right? She reinterprets marriage. She's also going to reinterpret virginity in a way that's very empowering for both genders, actually. Let's look at virginity, how it was before. Virginity in the patriarchal context is part of your body that is sacred, and you offer it only to one person. Now, if you offer it to someone before you meet your beloved, what happens to you? What do you look like now? What's the consequence? I let someone else enter me, or I entered someone else, and now I want to get married to this person in the patriarchal context. How is that seen? How is the woman seen? How is the man seen who have had already a partner before they find their marriage partner?
You're looked down upon.
Yeah, it's not great, right? I mean, if you look at the ancient text, you know, that woman loses value, right? Now she's, you know, seen, I mean, even I can remember back to the days of the sex education I received. It was, here were the expressions. Used sheets, right? The sheets of a bed, used the tainted wine. I have a whole dictionary for you. These expressions. But give me some of the expressions. But what else did y'all learn in your sex education classes? Tainted wine, used sheets, used, there's another one. Anybody else remember some of the words to describe a woman like that who has, okay, so that gives you an idea. So this is in the concept of patriarchy. You lose it, it's over. You cannot gain it back. It is a once and for all thing. And there's no forgiveness, right? I mean, now you can thankfully go and get operated and get it all back, you know, the virginity, in case you didn't know. But in general, right, you lose something that you can't. Now, when she's saying here that you can create a space-time that can be virgin, what is she saying that we can do with regards to virginity? This notion of laying out a space-time that is virginal. What does it mean? Is she implying I can get back my virginity, and how? What does it mean to become a virgin again in the context of Irigaray? She's reformulating the concept. She's not throwing it out. She's saying, no, this is a valuable concept, but I'm going to reframe it for the day that we live in today. What does it mean to come to a relationship as a virgin in the context of what we're learning with silence? How does it connect? What we just said about silence, how does it connect to coming as a virgin in the relationship? Let me hear you on that. This is great news, right? For those of us who've lost their virginity, you can get it back, guys. It's how you do it. How do you do it? What does it look like?
Would it be, wasn't like silence is also like overlooking like certain expectations? So you're not expecting them to be a virgin or anything.
So think of it differently, not so just too literal. If you come with silence with no expectations, it's a blank slate, right? You're not coming with a bunch of baggage and expectations. When you're not coming with a bunch of baggage and expectations, you are a kind of virgin. You see what I mean? Spiritually, emotionally, right? It's not just, see, virginity is not just a physical thing, right? It's an emotional thing. If you come in a relationship laden with baggage from the other relationship, and now you don't trust your new beloved. I was eavesdropping again. I have a lot of eavesdropping encounters like that. I was in a restaurant just this weekend, and I'm listening to two girls talking about guys. It's great. I was in the first seat, like I was like 50 centimeters away from them. So this girl is like, hey, do you go through your boyfriend's phone? She's like, of course. and the other one is like, why? She's like, well, you know, remember because of, and she named some guy from college that used to cheat on her. And she's like, that's why. Oh, I get it. So because the guy, her ex used to cheat on her, now she's going through current boyfriend's phone, expecting him to cheat on her. How is that going to end? Tell me. How is that going to play out once the guy is like, what the hell are you doing with my phone? Right? She's bringing in this old baggage into the new relationship. She's seeing the new man in the perspective of the old man, bringing a lot of tension, bringing a lot of insecurities, bringing a lot of distrust, basically coming with all of this baggage which will tarnish the actual relationship. So it's virginity is not just a physical thing, it's mostly for Irigaray, it's an emotional thing. How willing are you to set aside the past, right? To heal of your trauma so you can enter the relationship with not only no expectations, but no baggage, right? That's the two things that make you a virgin when you come in the relationship. You don't have expectations and you don't have baggage. You have processed your baggage, right? You have processed your trauma, your wounds, your distrust, and you have forgiven, you have moved forward, and now you're able to enter as a blank slate, right? That's what she's talking about. So virginity is not something that you can, that can be taken away from you, right? Virginity is something that you need to constantly work at, right? You need to constantly keep yourself virginal by healing and letting go of the past, right? So that you can build the future, right? Remember what she said, we just read this, the future is not defined by the past. The future should not be defined by the past. That's what she's saying here. Okay, great. All right, moving in the next 5 minutes into the notion of patience, page 7. So any questions or comments so far, actually, before we move into this new section? Anybody want to say something or disturbed by something, have a question about something, need to spew something out? This is the moment.
So all we talked about right now was the silence.
Yeah. All right, going to patience, page 7. Okay. Yeah. Second paragraph. 4th line. Second paragraph, 4th line, page 7. And insofar as we recognize that we are remote from one another, we can begin to come near. Okay, what does that mean? That's a paradox, right? As soon as I realize that I'm so far from you, that's when I'm the nearest to you. Tell me how that plays out. What does that look like? As soon as I realize you're so far away from me, we are so different. We will never agree.
Once we start to acknowledge our differences and like define them, like we were saying before with the house of language, giving words to them, then we could come close to each other and like find the other in each other.
The moment you get to that point of disagreement and conflict, there's a huge possibility there. At that moment, you either leave the relationship or you draw closer. Let me give you an example, right? You're dating for a few weeks, first day of the date, right? First date, you come home, you're like, oh my God, I met my soulmate. We love everything the same. We love the same books. We love the same movies. We have the same mindset. We're politically aligned, right? And you're so happy at how similar you are and how you've met your kind of clone, right? And so you're going very smoothly as everything is the same. All of a sudden you have a huge fight. You realize that they're going to vote for this person and you're going to vote for that person. And that is a non-negotiable. And now you're thinking, oh my God, I can't be with you. I can't be with you. At that moment, says Irigaray, the moment you're thinking, I can't be with you because of this difference, you have a choice. You can either leave and go further, or you can draw closer. There is a huge potential when you get to the confrontation and the conflict. If you weather the conflict, if you're able to be with them with their difference, you will draw so close to them in a way that you weren't close before. Before you weren't close to them, you were close to you. You were close to the sameness that you saw. You were close to you reflected in them. You see what I mean? You were in love with you. Everything in them that reminded you of you. The moment now they appear as them, right? At first you're horrified. You're like, what? I didn't, sign up for this. At that moment, you can either drift further apart or you can draw closer. To the extent that you're able to embrace the difference is to the extent that you will draw near to that person in a way that you've never drawn near to anyone before. I tell people, I have a beautiful way that I put this. You know how when we fall in love with someone, we fall in love with their spirit, right? We love their hopefully some of us fall in love with just for the body shape, but when we get a little more mature, we fall in love with the inner, right? Everything we love about them, right? We fall in love with what I call their light, right? So we love how they make us laugh. We love, you know, the way their eyes are shining. We love all kinds of little things that are so beautiful and communicate the light that is within them. Are we able to the same extent of loving their darkness too, right? Can we also love that person's darkness as much as their light? That's what she's talking about here. I say it in this way. I use kind of biblical terms. I say, can you love their flesh as well as their spirit, right? You love their spirit, and that's beautiful. You can perceive their spirit. That's amazing. But can you love their flesh, right? Or I can say, you love their beauty, but can you love their ugliness, right? You love their light, can you love their darkness? To the extent that you're able to love both, you will draw so near to that person. You will develop such an intimacy with that person that you can't have if you just love the light. If you just love the spirit, if you just love the beauty, you just love the facade. But if you love the flesh and the darkness and the ugliness, now you have penetrated into the person and you love them at their very core. That's what it means to draw near in the way that she's talking about. So we should always ask ourselves, right? Am I able, right, if we're considering a partner, am I able to love also your flesh as much as your spirit? Can I love your brokenness as much as your power, right? Everyone has both. They have power and they have brokenness. Can you love both equally? Right? Can you have love also for their flesh and not just their spirit? So that's the idea. And to the extent that you can love both is the extent that you will draw into their very experience, right? Okay, now page 9, this is a concept I really love because I always have to memorize it. I have to put it on every wall. Top of the page, go down 5 lines. To build such openings requires from us an active undertaking, but also a letting be. Let's talk about this letting be now for the remaining few minutes. I'm gonna go over like 5 minutes. So what does it mean to let the other be? Tell me a little bit, what does that look like in a relationship that I love you, but I love you while letting you be? Remember, we are used to thinking of love as possession. You're mine, right? We even Valentine's Day, right? Will you be mine? This language for Irigaray has to change. We got to change all the Hallmark cards, right? Be mine, or, you know, and so forth. We're too used to seeing love as possession. Now she's saying, let us reformulate. We need to see love as a letting be. Opposite of possession. Love as a dispossession. What does that look like? Anybody know? What does it mean to love someone in a spirit of dispossession? To love someone and let them be. You should be thinking of Buber here. Buber is popping up really loudly in my head right now. What does it mean? To love by dispossessing. You're not used to it, huh? Like what? What does that look like? Give me examples where you have to let the other be. While you're thinking, here's more on letting be, page 58. So she's going to go in details. What does this mean exactly? Why is it so hard? Second paragraph. Now, first, let's just skip around in that page. First line. Such a flowering, what flowering? We don't know. Letting be is as important as mastering. Second paragraph, such a letting be is what is most difficult for us. It forces us to relinquish the ideal of mastery that has been taught to us. It's an ability, let me just continue, not as an aptitude for staying within our limits in order to respect the other, but as an ability to dominate everything and everyone. That's how we're taught, including the world and the other. Now here it is. Here's the definition of letting be. Without letting them blossom according to what or who they are. And then even further, moved by nature, by the other, it will be difficult for us to leave them to their becoming until our next meeting. Okay, what does it mean to let be based on this text? What's your understanding? Yes?
Kind of like what you were saying with the guy who went into the office, like he wasn't like let be, he had to become what the other, what his spouse wanted him to be as opposed to what he wanted to be.
Yes, she didn't let him be in his own
In his own
becoming,
becoming,
right?
yeah.
He had his calling, his destiny over here. She was like, I don't see this in our future, right? So instead of building the house together, right? The house of language, like, oh, I'm building this here. You fitting in, squeezing him in that house, right? Okay, very good. Letting the person be number one. One way to let be the other is to really understand that they have their own calling. And it's not like yours. Does not have to be what you're called to do, right? They have their own destiny, their own career, their own abilities. Don't make them into you. What's another way, the letting be? Look how she says here, this is very powerful. Moved by nature, it will be difficult for us to leave them to their becoming until our next meeting. And she goes even so far here. Yes, this is very poignant on page 15:8. Last paragraph, how to give again to the other the freedom to search for their own way when I have been made one with him. This is the hardest. You've been in a relationship with that person and now they need space. They need time. And you're going insane. What do you mean you need space? What do you need? You need time. What do you need? You need to go on a 3-month cruise by yourself. Right. What do you mean you need to go on this trip? What do you mean you need to pick up that career? What do you mean you need to hang out with this person? Right. And we are incapable because we're so used to love as possession. We do not understand that love is also creating the space for them to leave us. Maybe not fully, but we have to see love it's a balance between be with me and don't be with me. Right. It's not just be with me. Right. That's possession. Love is, I want you, but at the same time, I can let you go. That's love. That's the new definition. For now, we have always defined love as I want you, and let's just be here together in this house, right? Now she's saying we have to be able to both hold and let go at the same time. Can I love you while letting you go? And sometimes love will mean you let them go for good. Sometimes love will mean you let them go for a few months. Sometimes love will mean you let them go to explore whatever they need to explore, be with whoever they need to be. That is the most hard thing to do because you are now bound to them. So whatever they're doing is affecting you. But yet she's saying this is the way that we reach the higher love, right? The lower love is you're with me and we live happily ever after. The higher love acknowledges that there are seasons in the relationship and we have to allow these seasons to happen. There are seasons of proximity and seasons of distance. I used to see love as, you know how the earth rotates around the sun, right? And sometimes the earth is very close to the sun, right? Sometimes the earth is very far from the sun because it's not a circle, right? It's a kind of a orbit like this. So sometimes you're like really close and then sometimes you're way over there. Love is like that. Sometimes your partner will be way over there in the ellipse. Relationships are elliptic, right? Sometimes your partner will be close and that's great, we're happy. Sometimes they will be over there on the ellipse and we have to allow that. Sometimes they will need time away from you. Sometimes they will need time without talking to you. Sometimes they will even leave the house for days, for years, right? You're there on the ellipse, right? And allowing that and still being the sun, grounded, right? Allowing them to revolve in that way is what she calls the love of the 21st century, right? Is being able to love them when they're close and to love them when they're far, to accept that there are seasons. Sometimes it's going to be winter. Don't try to make it summer. Don't be there, dancing merengue in the living room in the middle of winter. Nobody wants to see you dance, right? Right now it's like, relax. Don't do anything. Don't try to make it work. You know how it is? We hit a winter in the relationship. This is really important. You hit a crisis. All the love is gone. You don't feel anything for them, and it's obvious they don't feel anything for you. In fact, they're looking at other people right now. They have a catalog. They're in the catalog, right? And our first reaction when it gets to that point where the other person not interested in us so much is like, oh, I got to make this work. Let's make this work, babe. Let's go to counseling. Let's do this. And you're multiplying activity when it's a winter. Winter, what does it mean? How do you feel like in the winter? Should you be out there, mowing lawns in the winter? What should you be doing in the winter? If you're smart. Yeah, inside watching Netflix, right? Being passive. It's not trying to do things. There are moments in the relationship where it's better to do nothing than to try to make it work. These are the winter. Accept, I'm in a winter. let me just go through this winter without trying to make anything work, right? And then there are moments where you have to do things. Summer, right? At the moment, that's the moment where you do things, but we have to accept the relationship will go through winter, through spring, through fall, through summer, and we have to kind of roll with the punches, right? And accept that this is the letting go while holding. I love you, but I know you need your space. I know you need your time. I know you need to go on that journey. And yes, you can't take me with you, but that's okay, right? That's the idea. So are you seeing how this is so different from what we've been taught in terms of love? This is a totally different way of seeing romantic relationships than what we know, which is, you know, you get married, you're together, you have these kids, you have a mortgage, you have a car, an SUV, if you please, and then you have maybe a dog. And that's the classic, right? She's saying we are in a different world. We need to explain it, reinterpret everything, and reframe what it means to be woman, man, loving each other, right? Okay, great. So next time we will look, and you can, when you're reading, you can pay attention to that. We'll look at the concept of moving boundaries and of double listening. So stop the recording.